The Sara Sharif case. The beating, the lengthy torture and then the murder of a 10-year-old girl by her father and stepmother is a story that is both too sad and too infuriating for most of us to cope with. If Charles Dickens had known about it, he would have found it too awful to write about. The judge had to apologise to the jury for the traumatic things they had had to hear and see before finding this awful pair of human beings guilty. There are questions, inevitably, about why the social services didn't realise what was going on earlier and come to Sara's rescue long before her killers had fled to Pakistan. Let's hear first from LBC's reporter Emma Kaur, who has spent the day outside the Old Bailey. Emma, this is one of those cases where, I feel for reporters, I feel for everybody who has to listen to all the detail.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly distressing and difficult case for a jury to sit through as well for 9 weeks, Andrew. But making their decision today, Sara's father, Urfan Sharif, he looked straight ahead when that guilty verdict was read to him for murder, the murder of his daughter. Beinash Batool, who's Sara's stepmother, broke down in tears as jurors confirmed she had been found guilty of murder.
She had been kind of icy all the way through the interviews, just, no comment, almost unemotional.
Yeah. She had throughout those police interviews, no comment, but in court, actually, she's been very tearful throughout the trial. Sara's uncle, Faisal Malik, he was living with the family at the time of Sara's death, was found guilty for causing or allowing the death of a child, whereas Urfan Sharif and Beinash Batool found guilty of murder. And during the course of this trial, over the past 9 weeks, Andrew, we have heard, as you mentioned, some incredibly disturbing details in this case, how 10-year-old Sara was treated at home, her home in Woking. Her body was found on a bunk bed as if she was in bed asleep on the 10th of August last year, after her father, Urfan Sharif, made this phone call to Surrey police.
I need you to take a breath because I cannot understand what you're saying, okay? Your daughter has died.
I killed my daughter.
How have you killed your daughter?
I beat her up. It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much.
And Urfan Sharif, Beinash Batool and Faisal Malik had all left for Pakistan the day before that phone call was made, booking flights to the country just hours after Sara had died. And beside Sara's body, Surrey police found a note written by Urfan Sharif echoing what he said in his phone call, but they were shocked to discover, Andrew, how Sara had been suffering. And I want to warn here as well, some of these details are incredibly distressing, but important to share what this 10-year-old girl endured. There was evidence of extensive bruising to Sara, some inflicted with some burns as well, and some inflicted with a domestic iron. Evidence of scalding with boiling water. She had over 25 fractures and human bite marks were found on her body. Also evidence she'd been beaten with objects, including a cricket bat, and signs her head had been covered with homemade hoods made of plastic bags and parcel tape. And the prosecution in this trial described the treatment of the 10-year-old in the last 3 weeks of her life as just brutal, with multiple and extensive injuries sustained over an extended period of time, potentially over 2 years. Now, during the trial, Urfan Sharif initially denied beating Sara, but halfway through his witness testimony, he told the court he took full responsibility for Sara's death, but he continued to deny murder. Beinash Batool and Faisal Malik we didn't hear from in this case, but we did hear evidence, of course, over the past 9 weeks from neighbours, from Sara's, some of the Sharif family neighbours, Sara's teachers as well from her school. And she was described as a lively little girl who loved singing and dancing and performing.
One of the great mysteries in this to me would be why people didn't notice what was going on. And it was partly apparently because she was wearing Islamic dress to hide the bruises, to hide the injuries.
That's right. So closer to Sara's death in that kind of final year of her life in 2023, last year, she did go to school wearing a hijab, and that was used to disguise the injuries, and that's why neighbours perhaps didn't report what was happening.
Absolutely horrendous. Emma, thank you very much indeed. Now, listening to that is the Children's Commissioner for England, Rachel de Souza. Rachel, one of those appalling cases which, thank God, don't come along very often. But how concerned are you? I've been trying to count the number of times that people tried to contact the authorities about Sara, and it's well over a dozen over a couple of years. How worried are you about that in particular?
Andrew, I cannot. I mean, just thinking of that child's battered, tortured, body in the last few hours of her life, I am filled with fury, and I am deeply concerned. I believe that the safety net that should have been around her, she was a child known to social services before her birth, the safety, and that means she would be 6 times more likely than normal children to die due to abuse, neglect, inflicted injuries than other children. She has been let down, and I am not accepting any more from anyone. Lessons will be learned, or we're doing a review. It's the start of a new government. There's a children and wellbeing bill coming in. I need change. I need change for these children now. There are other Sara Sharifs out there, and there are some very clear actions that need to be taken.
Well, tell me about the actions, because I hear the emotion in your voice, Rachel, and you're absolutely right. This cannot go on, this kind of thing. So how do we ensure that when somebody picks up the phone to social services or even the police and say, I'm worried about this child, I'm worried about bruises on her, or I'm worried about her demeanour, it's not ignored?
Yeah, and look, all credit to the school, because the school raised the alarm. The school actually raised and made a referral to social services. They saw the bruises. So, some of the services there were trying to do what they should do. We've got a massive problem if a child known to social care has her case closed in 6 days. The school referred her, saying that they were very worried. She had her case closed in 6 days. There is and what seems to have happened is that they didn't have accurate data to verify that it was her. They didn't know that she'd been known to services. We have to sort out now the data around children at risk. We absolutely have the capacity, and I think most people in this country would think that education, social care, different areas of the country in social care speak to each other with the data, but they don't. And this is a massive failure in this case. I have argued for a unique identifier and for data sharing. It was put in the Labour manifesto. There is a children and wellbeing bill coming up. We must see that sorted, as well as leaders of social care, chief executives, making sure these areas are funded properly. But also there's another problem, which is shortly after the school raised the concern, she was taken out to home education. Totally unacceptable. And in the Children and Wellbeing Bill, and this is, I've argued with Secretary of State after Secretary of State to get an elective home education register set up. It is in a Labour manifesto. I must see it in the Children and Wellbeing Bill, and I must see that any child who is at risk in this way, someone notices bruises as a referral, isn't allowed to be educated at home. Just like the case of Arthur Lavinia Hughes. Had he been under the eyes of school, maybe we could have saved him. School is a real safeguarding. So they're two very, very practical but important things that we need government and the services to do and do now.
Given where we are right now with the sort of disconnected and apparently chaotic system, do you believe that it is possible that right now there is another Sara Sharif out there?
Yes, I do. And that's why I'm not willing to wait for, lessons will be learned. We need to do another review. We've heard them. You and I, Andrew, have discussed child after child when this has happened. Star Hobson, Arthur Lavinia Hughes, end of the last Labour government. Baby P. It's got to change, and now is the moment to do it. There's a new progressive government committed to a child and wellbeing bill. They can pull the levers, and then we can make sure that this gets sorted and sorted quickly.
Well, on and on these terrible stories go. I wish we didn't have to have this conversation, but thank you very much, Rachel D'Souza, for doing so.